The Hard Rock Empire is on the air. We are back after a little bit of a break, but we're happy to be back with you once again for a chance to take a look at the best hard rock and heavy metal for a given date. The given date in question today is February the 13th, and coming to you at a special time, 2 p.m. Eastern on a Saturday, so very EU-friendly today. And since we talk about a lot of European bands, that's maybe a good thing. So welcome if you are joining us from Europe at a more normal time for you than typically in the middle of the night. I'm Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We'll be going through the music of February the 13th today, and then starting next week, we'll be back on our regular schedule, so make sure you tune into that, although we'll talk more about that in just a moment, because obviously we've got time change coming up here in the U.S. coming up tomorrow, so that may impact when you can hear the Hard Rock Empire live. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. I can talk again. I'm not dying or just otherwise unable to function, so pretty excited about that. We don't talk a lot about news anymore necessarily on the podcast, but there were a couple things I noticed that I thought were interesting to bring up real quick.
Yeah.
We talked about months ago the idea of Metallica doing the Sphere in Vegas.
Oh, sorry, that just auto-played. That was cool.
That was frightening.
YouTube, you just never know what you're going to get.
Not only has Metallica signed on to do shows at the Sphere, but they're adding dates. So they're now up to 20 shows between October of 2026 and March 2027. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Other one is that, Sebastian Bach finally found a band to play with.
Okay.
He's going to be replacing the recently retired Dee Snider on some Twisted Sister shows coming up. Not a full-time gig, just some concerts. But, it's good to see him playing with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And, not surprised about the Sphere announcement. I feel like almost everything that goes into that venue starts off as a more limited run, and because it's just, one, in high demand, and two, just kind of a cool experience that everybody kind of adds to it, so not a surprise there. Good for Sebastian Bach. It's very clear that, he and Skid Row are just not going to get back together, and I think everybody's just kind of come to terms with that, and including both parties. I don't think there's really any hope for that. So, him singing with Twisted Sister, I'm sure is going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, Dee Snider has a very unique voice as well, so it'd be kind of interesting to hear his take on some of their hit songs, but good for him and good for Twisted Sister that obviously the band still wants to get out there and continue to tour, and this is kind of a good way to be able to do that and have, you're not trying to hire some young guy like you're going to make this a long-term thing. Like, it's clearly a case where you're just doing it for a little while.
It's not a bad thing to get Sebastian Bach as your understudy. That's that. I could live with that.
Yeah.
I do got a question though, totally unrelated to this kind of. Is Twisted Sister the best hard rock cameo in a movie of all time?
It's certainly up there for
their
sure.
appearance in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I mean, I don't know if it gets any better than that.
Well, and to me, that was really where I really kind of started getting into their music, because I feel like the only things you really ever heard on normal radio were songs like "We're Not Gonna Take It,"
I Want to Rock.
Yeah, I Want to Rock. It was the very biggest hits, and it really wasn't the deep cut stuff.
But Burn in Hell's a great song.
It's a great song, and I think that's when you start saying, oh, these guys are more than a gimmick.
Yeah.
These guys actually can go, and I think that was such a huge... And I'm sure I have read before the story of how they ended up in that movie, but...
It's been a while, but I've read it as well.
Yeah, but it's just, really cool and so out of place for... maybe it isn't because of the chaos of the movie itself, but it's just not something you expect to see when they're running through the studio, and here they are filming the music video for this song, and
so great.
Just a classic. If you have never watched that, you should definitely go back and do that. But
check out the song and the movie.
Yes, both.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I can't think of a movie that further exceeds expectations more than that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you, even back in the day, if you were just looking for that to be, just kind of an extension of the TV show or whatever it may be, they went way above and beyond. And obviously, when you see the people who were involved in that movie, you can understand why. They clearly wanted this to be big, and it was, and I think it still holds up, which is always
absolutely.
Great to see.
Would gladly watch it any day.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely check that out, and obviously check out Twisted Sister maybe checked them out on tour. In fact, so that's kind of some good news. But always good to hit some news headlines every once in a while on the podcast, especially when we've had some downtime, as Mike mentioned. I've been working through some illness here, but the good news is about this podcast is it's our own podcast, so we can take some time if we need to, and we can also kind of kick it into overdrive if we need to catch up, and we'll be doing that over the next few weeks. So the best advice I can give you is to join the Discord, and I will be posting that link as I mentioned that now, because that's a good way to know when we're going to have bonus episodes, or if we're going to have episodes that maybe are at a different time like this one is, just with my crazy schedule this weekend and some things getting shuffled around. We had to kind of do an afternoon Saturday podcast, but like I said, a little more EU friendly, so maybe that will benefit those people as well. So definitely join the Discord. It's a great way to just kind of stay a part of the community and also find out exactly what's going on with the Hard Rock Empire. So definitely encourage you to check that out. Again, before we get into the music of February the 13th, a couple of reminders. Number one, we'll be back at our regular time next week, 7 o'clock Eastern. No show tomorrow night. I'll be in Indianapolis for the Horizon League tournament for the next couple of days. But we'll be back again next Sunday at 7. Now, the time changes in the United States tomorrow. We move forward 1 hour. So if you're listening to us outside of the U.S., your time you hear the Hard Rock Empire, if you join us live, may shift by an hour. So check local listings. The graphic you see on the screen on Twitch and on YouTube is updated post-time change. So if you compare your time to GMT, back it up to 2300 on Sunday. If you are JST in Japan, 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday. If you're anywhere else, you can kind of use those time zones to kind of base off of. Obviously, 7 o'clock Eastern time won't change, but it'll be daylight saving time starting tomorrow, which to me is kind of that sign. I mean, as if the 82-degree weather we had yesterday wasn't a sign that spring is almost here, and I'm so excited for that.
This winter's just been absolutely brutal. There's no other way to put it. Like, I haven't spoken to anyone who hasn't been sick at some point over the last, month and a half.
Yeah, and I think it's just the combination of there have been bugs going around, obviously, but also just the crazy weather we've had. It's been bitterly cold and tons of snow, and then the snow's gone in a week, and it's 82 degrees, and we're going to dip back down again. It's flooding. Yeah, I've seen a ton of that around. So hopefully the weather wherever you are is not as maybe turbulent as it has been here, but so that's just kind of where we're at right now. But again, our normal time. If you're on East Coast US, 7 o'clock Eastern, that won't change. But if you're elsewhere in the country, if you're in parts of the country that don't observe daylight saving time, like in Arizona, your time's going to be different starting next week. So just be wary of that. We'll give you the times on the screen to kind of work off of, and hopefully you'll find us. And of course, if you're watching on the VOD, and it's just not going to impact you at all other than when the VOD gets uploaded, so no worries about that. So that covers kind of all the administrative tasks that we need to cover. So that means it's time to get to the music. So as we do each and every week, Mike will go through and put together a playlist of the music for a given week. The given week in question this time is February the 13th, and he will curate that playlist to really the best of the best stuff that's out there. He'll go through kind of curate it a little further. I'll go through, listen to it. We'll go through the albums, and we'll each pick an album that we want to spotlight. And then before we get to the ones that are kind of our spotlight albums, we like to go through, and Mike likes to go through and kind of give us any other interesting albums, whether it's interesting band names, whether it's big acts that have releases, sometimes it's box sets and live albums, things like that maybe are worthy of a mention, but maybe not in our spotlight for this given week. So before we get to the two albums that we chose for the week, Mike, what do you have as far as just kind of the best of the rest, if you will?
Yeah, so there wasn't really a whole lot major label artists, at least nothing on my radar as far as new releases go. There were a couple other albums that I listened to this week that I'm not selecting, but could have because they were both really good as well. The newest one from Ian Highhill, Him Among Graves. Dude is a Finnish metal single man band. Dude's really good at what he does.
Yeah.
If you like Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, give his stuff a listen. But that album was really good. Then there was the second album from the band Leatherhead, a Greek speed metal band. Their album Violent Horror Stories came out. Listen to that. At times I kind of got old Queensryche vibes from these guys, and that's always a really cool thing as well. So check those out. We did get some re-releases and box sets coming out, or came out and re-released or whatever, but one of those being a covers album from the band Enough's Enough, the classic glam metal band. Their cover album, Covered in Gold, originally came out in 2014. I would tell people to check this out, if only because the track list is so interesting. I think any metal fan or any music fan at times thinks, hey, if I was going to do a cover album, what songs would I want to include? Like, what would I want to recreate? And these guys are kind of all over the place. You got things from like Queen, Stone Cold Crazy, The Cult, She Sells Sanctuary, Nirvana's All Apologies, Prince's When Doves Cry, Billy Squires' The Stroke, David Lee Roth's Yankee Rose, which is a legendary song, both for the song and just the spoken word parts that David Lee Roth has always been so good for. But just a really cool covers album. Definitely check it out. Then another one, a band that they've never really been on my radar despite being around since 1994. I'm not a big garage rock guy necessarily. Their album also could have made the list of the best names of the week. It's the newest compilation from the band The Helicopters, Cream of the Crap Volume 3, another collection of rarities and unreleased material. Again, not a subgenre that I'm super keen into, but what I heard of it was actually pretty good.
Interesting. They're not a band I'm real familiar with, so I'd have to maybe check them out.
And I know garage rock isn't really somewhere that I'm paying a lot of attention to, but it was solid. Moving on to the best names of the week, we had a split EP by two bands, which we see that from time to time. The split EP is called From Horrid to Worst, and the bands included are Force-Fed Horsehead and Shaving the Werewolf.
I was a little disappointed, but not surprised that Force-Fed Horsehead wasn't better.
It also is weird to me that I have so much trouble saying that without saying force-fed horse shit. I don't know why, but that's just where vocally I just want to me, that's what the name should be, and it's not, and it's confusing. But yeah, not necessarily my cup of tea, but great names.
Yeah.
Kind of after that, we had a new one from the band Slaughter Day, which I'm always a fan of coming up with fun interpretations of days of the week. The newest album, Dread Emperor. But yeah, Force-Fed Horsehead and Shaving the Werewolf. I mean, that is, like, you couldn't come up with fake bands with better names like that.
Yeah, those are
both great.
Very good. Good stuff for sure. And Cream of the Crap, certainly, as you mentioned. Honorable mention there, but also, a solid release, so it kind of earns its own spot in its own space. So, definitely check those out. And again, check out the playlist. Mike has a bunch of that stuff on there, and you can find some stuff. And honestly, there wasn't a ton of great stuff this week as far as like the overall size of the playlist, but I thought the stuff that was on there was really strong. So percentage-wise, I felt like the batting average was very high for the stuff that was on the list. So I think as you go through there, you're really going to enjoy it. But of course, we can only pick two. So it's time to get into our two picks, and we already heard a preview of one when YouTube decided to just go ahead and start auto-playing it for some reason that I'll never understand. But let's get into it. Mike, what do you have for your pick for this week?
Yeah, so there were several that I really liked this week. Your pick was really good. Mine was good. And the two that I mentioned earlier could have easily been my picks. But I am going to Spain for a power metal band, their second full-length album. The band in question is Unchosen Ones, and their newest album is Divine Power Flowing.
Yeah, this was another one, and again, that probably led to why this thing auto-played, is it's another one that's not on YouTube Music, and I don't know if that's a growing trend. It's not the first time that's happened in the last maybe month or so where an album wasn't on there, and not a case of it being the release date being moved or anything like that. It just wasn't. So, but they do have a Bandcamp. You can find it there, and it's definitely worth checking out because what I've heard of it so far is really good.
Exactly. I would definitely check out the Bandcamp. One thing I noted on the Discord from the listing on their Bandcamp, and I thought this was really important, is that if you buy the CD, let's see, where does it mention it here? Oh, yeah, there it is. Experience the true lossless quality in your house, compatible on all CD players, DVD players, and Sega Saturn boot menu. So if you're still playing your music on your Sega Saturn, rest assured that the Unchosen Ones album will play on that.
Yeah, it's funny because that sentence, it feels like even a few years ago would have been ridiculous, and now there's 100% somebody out there listening to their music on their Sega Saturn.
Oh, absolutely. And, being a retro gaming guy in general, there is something about like that era of gaming, like the boot screens that came up when you turned on those like 32-bit systems. Just man, it takes you back to a time for sure.
It does.
But anyway, like I mentioned, this is their second full-length album, follow-up to 2023's debut, Sorrow Turns to Dust. Band formed in 2020 and includes Jose Fernandez on drums, Fran Romero on guitars, Christian Marco on keyboards, Javier Calderon on vocals, and Pablo Alvarez on bass. Metal Archives lists the band's themes as self-empowerment, which I kind of feel like is a necessary component for power metal bands. Like there has to be a certain like, yeah, get up and get excited kind of something that plays really well in like the festival circuit, I think. But also video games and movies. The first album featured tracks inspired by Mad Max, Castlevania, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and there was even a track written as a tribute to the Berserk creator, Kentaro Miura. So really cool there.
Yeah.
This newest album, Divine Power Flowing, continues where that left off. You have the tracks Caught by the Wind, inspired by Castlevania, Whirligig Saw, inspired by Bloodborne, and Divine Power Flowing, the title track, is a tribute to Fist of the North Star. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, no kidding.
A lot of ways, this to me feels like classic power metal, something I would have discovered in the early 2000s that maybe was released in the late 90s. Created by bands who either are no longer around or if they are, have kind of moved on to different musical directions. So it's kind of cool to have current bands doing this. The added bonus to me also is that now you're going to have bands that are making this kind of music that you like who are inspired by a lot of what shaped your own childhood, whether it be just classic 80s and 90s movies, video games, anime. It really just enhances the experience even more. Where did my track list go here? Okay, there we go. Whew, man, putting my notes together was a mess this week, apparently. This week had a lot of really good albums. This one definitely scratched an itch that I didn't even know I had, but it really worked out. Standout tracks include Idols and Kings, Curse Without a Cause, Divine Power Flowing, Midnight Mass, and the track that I figured we could listen to today, the song Caught by the Wind.
Yeah, let's check these guys out. Again, really good stuff from them, and this new album is the Unchosen Ones from Divine Power Flowing, and this is the track Caught by the Wind from their official video that did play a little bit earlier. Let's listen to it a little bit more in full now. Yeah, you know, this was one, like I said, that jumped out on the playlist this week, and I thought it was really good. Like you said, there were certainly a handful of things this week that could have been picked, but you know, I do think, you know, when you start talking about some of those influences, it adds a little something extra for people of our age that not only is it good and it's power metal, which is always going to be something that we're going to spotlight on this podcast, but kind of has a little bit more of I don't want to say a nerdy edge to it, but a little bit of a, you know, just kind of some of the same stuff that we enjoy. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting a chance to check this whole album out because what I've heard so far has been really excellent.
It's kind of funny because you think of like some of the older bands, like they were doing the same things, but they were writing about Tolkien and Lovecraft, and probably equally nerdy of topics. But now we're into 2026, and you know where your nerd references fall might be a little different. You might be now into the 80s and 90s and beyond, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely worth checking those guys out. Thought that was really good stuff from the Unchosen Ones, their new album out on February the 13th. Definitely check that out. I have a great pick as well this week. Like Mike said, I really thought there were 3 or 4 bands that really stood out this week, but this one to me was really excellent. This is the prog rock metal project that at one point was based in Italy, now considered to be Paris-based. This is Primaluce with Way of Perfection. You know, prog rock / prog metal, I'm a fan for sure, but it's got to be done the right way for me to get into it for this podcast, because it's typically going to be longer songs and longer albums. These guys really knocked it out of the park. Of course, led by multi-instrumentalist Stefano Primaluce. It was originally founded with Andrea Rocchi and Marco Adami. Marco Adami still, I believe, with the band along with Rocchi, so all three of them still there. Primaluce handles rhythm guitars, keyboards, backing vocals, and programming. Rocchi is lead and acoustic guitars. Adami is bass. Michelle Avila on drums, and Falco, not the Falco, I don't think, but Falco on vocals. Discog said they were formed in 1993. Their Bandcamp page, I think, said late 90s, so sometime in the 90s for sure. From their Bandcamp, and again, because it's prog, I like to read the descriptions because they're always sometimes as interesting as the music. Way of Perfection is a journey through motion, contrast, and transformation, blending progressive rock and metal with melodic intensity and cinematic atmospheres. This album explores the tension between discipline and instinct, control and release, precision and emotion. Written as a cohesive work rather than a collection of songs, Way of Perfection unfolds gradually, moving from powerful riffs and complex arrangements to more introspective and evocative moments. Melody plays a central role throughout, guiding the listener across shifting dynamics, intricate rhythms, and expansive soundscapes. A lot of that is probably way over my head for a music fan. And, when you listen to these guys, I think it's hard not to compare these types of bands with Dream Theater. They're kind of the mainstream standard for what you consider progressive rock, progressive metal to be. I think there's maybe a little bit more in the way of the melodic side. Maybe if there's a spectrum of progressive, I think it's maybe a little bit more progressive rock than progressive metal. But there are definitely some metal elements there, so it kind of walks that line. Either way, this is really good. And like I said at the beginning, when I see these albums come up, because we get a lot of progressive rock bands, and I look and it's 12 tracks and it's an hour and 15 minutes long or whatever it is, it had better be really good, because I will tend to get bored with it even if I like it. These guys found a way to make every song interesting, and even if they were 6, 7, 8 minutes long, they didn't drift down a path and lose you at some point during the song. And I think that really speaks a lot to the quality of this album, because that's an accomplishment, that you can do all the things that make progressive bands amazing and yet not bore the listener who's even a fan of your work. And I think they have done an outstanding job with this. So if you're a prog rock, prog metal fan, I think this absolutely should be on your list to pick up this year, because it is really good. Standout tracks include Back Into the Blue, Running Out of Yesterday, Stand in My Name, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is The Wind Remains. Check these guys out. This is Primaluce with Way of Perfection. This is the opening track off of this album, and is The Wind Remains. Let's listen to a little bit more of that now.
I sense a shift within the unrest, where the wind remains. I'm learning how to loosen no chains. What wants to find the shape of me falls open in the brighter breeze. The road ahead no longer fades. I walk where the wind remains. I used to hold the past with.
I had to pick that one because of that little segment right after the
was great.
chorus. Just in case you had any doubts on whether this was progressive rock / metal or not, that should answer them. But like I said, I think the vocals really stand out here. And obviously all the stuff that's going on in the background is amazing as well. You get the great prog stuff, but I think the vocals just take it to another level over the average prog band. And this is really fantastic stuff. Mike, your thoughts on these guys?
I think in a lot of ways it's kind of what James LaBrie did for Dream Theater when he jumped in. Is like he gave you that this could be a top tier melodic rock vocalist, and he's singing with a progressive metal band.
Yeah.
And to me, kind of going back to the Dream Theater thing, to me they were the first band I heard that a Metallica fan could enjoy progressive music. Like,
Yeah.
there was that accessibility where it's like, if you like this already, this is just kind of not too far off from that. Like, it's still got a lot of the metal sensibility, and I think that's what these guys do really well. It's like, if you like melodic rock, like, you'll still like this. The musicianship might blow you away at times, but it's never at the expense of the songs.
Yeah, 100%. I think there are prog bands out there who get so wrapped up in being progressive that they forget that you're supposed to write songs that are fun and interesting and bring the listener in. I mean, obviously you have the right.
At the very least, you can't be surprised when you don't, when you're not striving for that.
Right.
You know?
So clearly that was an effort here, and I think they knocked it out of the park. So definitely check out Primaluce. I thought that was just an outstanding album this week. If you're listening on Twitch, we have to take a quick ad break, 90 seconds. If you're not subscribed, of course, you can subscribe with your Twitch Prime once a month for free, or your Amazon Prime through Twitch once a month for free. Or you can just hang through the ads. That would do us a huge favor by watching the ads. And we'll be back in 90 seconds. You're not going to miss any content. We're going to come back on the other side of the break with The Vault, where Mike and I will talk about a couple of classic albums you should check out. And if you're listening on YouTube, well, you're not going to get any ads, so you're going to join us for whatever we ramble about during the upcoming 90-second break. So stay with us for that. And the ads are preparing to run, and they are underway on Twitch. If you're still with us, welcome. We're glad to be back. It's been a tough couple of weeks just trying to get through everything. Mike has been through the ringer for sure. And I feel for anybody else who's had to go through some of the stuff that Mike's had to go through over the last couple of weeks. And so we're glad to be back. And like I said, we'll get caught up on all the stuff. The good news is we were kind of a week ahead of where we spent most of last year. So like it won't take very much time to get caught up.
Oh,
so,
for sure.
And we'll be back with you next week, Sunday night, February the 20th will be the music we'll be checking out next week. So looking forward to hopefully be another good week in music. I was thinking that when we got to February that, hey, we're going to have these big lists of releases. And then the 6th had a pretty large list. And then the 13th was like, maybe not so much. So hopefully the 20th will be a little bit heavier than the 13th, and we'll see if there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, so on the 20th, we started with 84 albums that got whittled down to, where's my column that I used to filter? There it is, way over there. I don't have my cool mouse with me. That has the horizontal scrolling. Get rid of blanks. That was narrowed down to 28.
Okay. So a little bit bigger list, I think, overall.
Also, I saw that Temple Balls album apparently actually came out on the 20th and not the 13th.
Oh,
it was
okay.
on my playlist for both weeks, but whatever.
All right, yeah, that's fine. So, and seems like that's another thing that's a little more common is these albums kind of shifting around a week or two here and there just for whatever reason. So if you're on Twitch, welcome back. We appreciate you sitting through the ads for us. Again, we are talking about the music of February the 13th this week, and we have done that. We've talked about that music. It's time to get to the vault where Mike and I, we each talk about a classic album you need to check out. And Mike's running through a couple different gimmicks. He's going through Sonic Temple bands every other week. He did that in the last episode we had. You're welcome to go back and check that out. But in the every other week, he's going back to 1969, started a couple weeks ago, checking out some classic albums. And, you know, we're off to a really good start. And I think I'm really interested in this week's album because this is a band that admittedly it's another one of those bands that I see as a greatest hits album band. And I don't really know a lot of their classic albums. So I would definitely like to get more into it, but what do you have for us this week on the Vault?
Yeah, I think something really cool about going with this Vault gimmick is it kind of gives you that history lesson aspect of it. You know, I love hard rock and metal, so any chance I have to maybe revisit something that was historically significant in the evolution of heavy music, I think that's a really cool thing to do. And man, when you're talking early 70s, there's plenty of that. Like there's any number of albums you can pick that were super influential or even just for the band themselves kind of like watershed moments or whatever. 1970 had a lot going for it. Just in debuts alone, you had Black Sabbath, you had Uriah Heep, Supertramp, Focus, UFO, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. A lot of heavy hitters there. Then you had albums. I mean, back then, like these bands were releasing albums like every year.
Yeah.
So you had Argent, Jethro Tull, King Crimson, who I think released 2 albums in 1970. Moody Blues, Golden Earring have a self-titled album. That's a band I'd like to go back and check out. They talk about a band that's not even really a greatest hits band. I only know 2 of their songs.
Right, they're a greatest 2 hits.
Yeah, Mott the Hoople, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Genesis, King Crimson. Yep, the second one there. But the one that I ended up going with was one that I knew was kind of a big deal because it involved a lineup change that really kind of solidified just a legendary form of that band, or mark as they put it. So with that being said, we are looking at the album from the band Deep Purple. That is their 4th album. It is 1970s in rock.
Yeah, classic album cover. I think that's another one of the things that this era brought you when, and you appreciate that stuff even more because they didn't have AI in 1970. Yeah. Like, some artists put this together in some form or fashion, so it really gives you an additional appreciation. Now I could create that same cover on an AI with our Hard Rock Empire cast and do it in like 5 minutes, but
it's not the same.
No, it is not.
It's not the same. So Deep Purple, they released 3 albums under the Mark I lineup previous to this, which included, of course, Ritchie Blackmore on guitars, John Lord on keyboards and backing vocals, Ian Pace on drums and percussion, Rod Evans on lead vocals, and Nick Simper on bass and backing vocals. Interesting thing about them is they were actually already kind of successful in the States just on those 3 albums. The article kind of suggests that the band lacked a clear direction. Up to that point, a lot of their material was like psychedelic rock that was centered around Blackmore's riffing, classical infused tracks by John Lord, who just legendary keyboardist, and then cover songs. Like, you look at some, they've covered Beatles songs. The song Hush, they covered that. I can't remember who it was that wrote that, but just songs that you wouldn't equate to Deep Purple in a historical context by any means. Blackmore, Lord, and Pace decided they wanted a more hard rock sound. Blackmore apparently wanted to give a go at being really heavy after hearing Led Zeppelin's first album. They were referred to a band called Episode 6, which featured Ian Gillan on vocals and Roger Glover on bass. While kind of originally they were on the fence because they kind of had a pretty good gig with Episode 6, they eventually jammed together and both decided to join the band. We talk about Black Sabbath, Van Halen, Iron Maiden as far as bands that had like huge lead singer changes. I kind of think Deep Purple's goes under the radar multiple times when you consider how many marks the band had and just legendary vocalists. But I would say that the switch from Rod Evans to Ian Gillan is highly underrated.
For sure.
So getting into this album, you kind of get this crazy guitar chaos to start the opening track, Speed King. But after you get through that, you immediately kind of hear the difference with Gillan, like, as far as the vocalist goes. Like, this is a guy that is clearly a hard rock vocalist, and it makes a lot of difference. Track 2, Bloodsucker, is another example of that. Then you get to Child in Time, which is over 10 minutes long, reminding everyone that Deep Purple does have prog chops and crazy musicianship. You then have another longer composition, Flight of the Rat. Seems like a lot of bands of this era had a tendency to get a little jammy in the middle of songs where you're kind of like, okay, I get it, you're playing. Like, I don't know if you really need a drum solo in the middle of this. I don't know if that serves any purpose. And I don't know if that was just to try to capture like a sense of like improvisation, like you were listening to a live experience, like, oh, they're just rocking out. That's what they do, and that's what happens. But it tends to happen a lot. And, I kind of feel like the track after Into the Fire, it accomplished in 3.5 minutes just as much as what Flight of the Rat did in 8 minutes. So that's just my opinion, but, it's all good. When I think of this Deep Purple lineup, I think of 1972's Machine Head, tracks like Highway Star, maybe on Leo, Smoke on the Water, Space Truck, and listening to In Rock kind of felt like a band that was working on trying to get to that point. Like, they're still kind of in that transition phase, but you could definitely hear kind of the beginnings of what would be just a hard rock powerhouse. Overall, the album's certainly worth a listen, both for the songs and just the historical significance of it. I also wish, and I knew that they used the naming convention, the Mark I, Mark II, Mark III for their lineups, and if you go to Wikipedia, like, they're up to Mark VIII, I think, now. I wish every band would do that just for their lineup changes to see how high they could like rack up their mark score, like Megadeth Mark 26 or something like that. Standout tracks on the album include Speed King, Bloodsucker, Child in Time, Living Wreck, Hard Lovin' Man. Really cool history lesson, I guess, but worth listening to.
Yeah, it's again, they're a band that I really would like to go back and check out more of their catalog. I definitely know that I don't know as much about them as I would like. I know the big hits, but as far as getting into the deep stuff, I definitely don't have that. But I've always appreciated what they've done, and I would imagine going through their catalog would be a lot of fun, especially this transition period, the beginning, moving into Mark II. So definitely worth checking out. We'll dive into the year 1971 in a couple of weeks when we continue on with this. So looking forward to that as you continue through the 70s. It is time for me to get to the vault, and we are wrapping up my run through the Frontiers bands. We are on to the letter Y. We have 1 more week with the letter Y, and then next week we will get to the letter Z, and there's only one Frontiers band, the letter Z, and that is the band Zion, who I know nothing about at the moment, but I will know something about by the time we get to next Sunday. But this week we are getting into a supergroup. This is an American rock supergroup composed of former members of Yes and Toto, and they have come up with the name Yoso, and this is their one and only album, Elements. Wikipedia just kind of describes the story the best because it's a little convoluted. It was formed by members of Yes, Tony Kaye and Billy Sherwood, and Toto, Bobby Kimball. It was a spinoff from the group Circa, which actually still exists. They're still out there. The plan was that Kimball and Circa were going to play a tour together in Italy in early 2009. Of course, it was in Italy. That's probably how they ended up with Frontiers. This tour was canceled, but they decided to form a new band under the name AKA, and it was later changed to Yoso. I don't know which of those. AKA feels like one that's probably already been taken, but
Sure.
With Shelley busy with other projects, he was replaced by Lou Molino III, who previously worked with Sherwood and former Yes guitarist Trevor Rabin. Album was recorded in 2009. They played 3 Mexican dates in October of 2009. They made some more lineup changes and then had some shows in 2010. We also added Frontiers announced some lineup changes with drummer Scott Connor of a Genesis tribute band and Johnny Bruns of a Yes tribute band coming in. In their live shows, they played a mixture of classic Toto songs, classic Yes songs, and material from the new album, which is basically what you get here, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. In 2011, the band dissolved. Bruns joined Kaye and Sherwood in Circa, once again replacing Jimmy Hahn, and basically that was the end of that. The YouTube music file for this album is weird because it's a 2-album release. You have the album of new stuff that they created and an album of them playing the new stuff live along with the classic Yes and Toto songs live. But for whatever reason, YouTube Music has decided, let's just put them all together into one track listing, shuffling those 2 lineups together. So as you listen to it, you will get a studio album version of a song and then immediately followed by the live album version of the same song. It makes for not a great listening experience as you go through. I don't know if it was always organized that way, but it's very strange. And however that ended up happening, I don't think did this album a whole lot of favors. The new album, the original stuff they wrote was fine. If you're a fan of Yes or Toto, there's a good chance you either have it or you have an opinion on it. And maybe that's the reason you don't have it. I don't think it's necessarily anything that you need to go run out and check out. It was okay, but nothing really to write home about. Obviously, the live tracks of the Yes and Toto stuff is good, as you would anticipate. But again, I'm sure both those bands have live CDs that are the band themselves playing it. So do you need to find a hybrid version of those? Probably not. So I would say overall this is probably a pass, but I don't regret listening to it. It was fine. And the live covers are probably where you want to focus in your efforts if you are going to check it out. Standout tracks on the original stuff include Yoso, Path to Your Heart, Walk Away, and Close the Curtain. Again, completely fine. These guys are all talented. They're going to put together decent music, but kind of forgettable at the same time, and probably the reason why they had one and only one album before they decided to go on and do their own things. So, like I said, next week, Zion, we're going to wrap that up, and then we're going to move on to something else. But the Frontiers thing is always interesting to me because we talk about it a lot. They put these bands together, and sometimes it works out and they make really cool stuff, and sometimes it's maybe not so much. But just interesting stuff from Frontiers.
It really kind of makes you want a glimpse inside the process of creating some of these albums. Like, how many times did they put together these super groups or ensemble castings? And early on, it's like, man, we don't really work that well together. Like, that has to happen every now and then.
Yeah, and that kind of feels like what we have here. And I mean, not that these songs are bad, but like, there's none of that album that is like, I've got to listen to this. Like, there have been some Frontiers super groups that I thought, man, this is really great. This was kind of like, it was a thing that happened. So, I've certainly gotten a chance to listen to a lot of great albums going through this Frontiers vault, and hopefully we'll get one more next week with Zion. I have, like I said, no idea what to expect, but we'll see how that works out. But that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Hard Rock Empire, which I hope I turn that up so you can hear the music. And again, we'll be back with you normal time, 7 o'clock Eastern, next Sunday night for the music of February the 20th. And again, if you are not changing your clocks tomorrow, then your time that you're going to hear us is going to change by an hour. So make sure you check out our Discord, which is pinned in both chats. And that way you'll know in your time zone when the Hard Rock Empire will air each and every week. A big thanks to Mike, as always, for his hard work on this podcast. A big thanks to Soap Lake Media for their continued support of the podcast. And a big thanks to you for checking it out whenever and wherever you are checking us out. We will join you again next Sunday night for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.